Hi, my name's Peter. I like motorcycles and motorcycle camping. I've been motorcycle camping for much of my adult life, and now I've started this YouTube channel to talk about my passion. So if you're interested, please consider subscribing. You may have seen my video on road navigation apps, but riding off the road is a whole different story. I'm using off-road to include all kinds of roads, including logging roads and trails, some of which have been developed and some of which are pretty rough. So when you head out into the backcountry, you have to have a pretty good idea of where you're going and what the road's going to be like. And for that, you need a pretty good navigation app. So I'm going to look at 4 navigation apps that I've used and tell you which ones I like the best and the pluses and minuses of all of them. In full disclosure, I am connected to the OnX app, and if you use the link in my show notes, I'll get a small commission. But that doesn't mean that's the app that you should buy. I'm going to talk about all these apps and their strengths and weaknesses, and you decide for yourself which one is the one that you want. And the first one I'm going to talk about is Gaia, and Gaia has a free tier, so you don't even have to pay for anything if you want to use the Gaia free tier. A lot of apps claim to support both on and off-road activities, but only because they can track your location via GPS. For example, here's a section of the Idaho BDR on OnX and on Gaia. Now here's the same section on Kalimoto. Just being able to import a GPX file doesn't make an app appropriate for backcountry navigation. In this video, I'm going to compare 4 off-road navigation apps to see which ones are worth paying the subscription fee for. So all the prices that I'm talking about are the prices that I got quoted when I was looking things up. They could change a lot, especially with our fluctuating dollar. These prices are in Canadian dollars. If you're in the States, you're going to see a lower price because your dollar's worth more than ours. All these apps are constantly changing, and they may have new features added. So I'm recording this in March 2025, and you might find that there are new features that have been added. Compare the apps for yourself before you make a decision, because things can change all the time. For an app to be useful off-road, it has to have 4 functions. It has to be able to download maps for offline use, because you're not always going to be in cell phone range when you're doing backcountry riding. It has to be able to follow you as you navigate, so you know where you are along the route. You need to be able to plan in advance or import a route. And it has to have an accurate mapping database. Stick around to the end to see an interesting glitch that 3 of these map apps share. Gaia is one of the dominant ones, and I'll start with that. It has a free version, so that's great. Lots of people use that. The only thing that it doesn't allow you to do in the free version is download maps for off-road use. And so that's a really important thing. However, if you go to the paid version, you can get a free trial period. You can download maps during the trial period and then cancel your subscription. You'll still have the downloaded maps. I happen to believe that if something's worth using, it's worth paying for. And so I'm not too shy about ponying up $50 for an app when I consider how much money I spend on motorcycling. I've been using Gaia for many years, and I started using it for hiking, and then I found that it was useful for motorcycling. Gaia used to be independent, and it was really cheap, and so that was one of the reasons why it took on such a big role in the off-road community. But Gaia has been taken over by Outside Magazine, and now it's part of a bigger corporate conglomerate. Now, it has 3 tiers of membership, and I find that the highest tier, which gives you access to the Outside Magazine subscription, and it gives you access to some outdoor courses and some discounts on merchandise. I don't need any of that stuff. I go for the middle tier, and that's enough because I can download maps and I can do the other things that I need to do. So many of these apps have a lot of layers, and that's one of the key differences between them. In addition to its basic topographic maps, Gaia has a winter layer, it has an air quality layer, the Backroad Mapbooks layer, and a cell coverage layer for the US. It has additional topographic maps, including US Forest Service maps, precipitation, public lands, and various satellite maps, and the wildfires in Canada. It also has layers that are specific to Australia and New Zealand and Europe. Gaia definitely has the richest options for map layers. On my most recent trip to the Chilcotin, I downloaded both Gaia's base map and the BRMB layer, which proved helpful when the road I was following left the route shown by Gaia. Okay, with Gaia, to create a route, you can just click the plus icon and a blue dot will appear. You can drag this dot to the starting point of the desired route. In this test, it drew a straight line to the point that I was trying to navigate to. I could have played around with it and made it more close to the road, and sometimes what will happen is after you change the route, it will figure out that there's a road there and then conform to the road. The light blue line is the point-to-point route, and the dark blue line follows the road. So I'll show you how it looks as I'm following the road. You got your map and it keeps centered and you stay on the route. One of the things you have to be careful about with Gaia is that Gaia sometimes creates routes that go off the main road and follow a bicycle trail or a hiking trail. So I don't know if you can see this. Let's see if I can. But when I originally plotted a route using Gaia and I transferred it to the Garmin app, this is the route that Gaia plotted. It went up here. Gaia is designed for hiking and self-propelled activity. It was originally designed for hikers. So even though you say I'm a motorsports, I'm going motorcycling, it still will take you on these weird things. It doesn't like to stick to the road. The Gaia database is pretty accurate. Where it shows you solid double lines, those are generally roads that are pretty straightforward to ride. Where it goes into broken double lines, these are often older routes that may have been abandoned and are not maintained. Sometimes I find these are even easy to ride, and sometimes I find them impassable. So you got to be aware of that. A single dotted line is some kind of a trail. It may be a single track that you can ride a motorcycle on, or it may be a hiking trail that's impassable by motorcycles. There's no way to know until you get there. Okay, OnX, which, as I mentioned, I'm supported by. OnX is dedicated to off-road motorsports. So that's one of the reasons why I like it. OnX uses basically the same database for its base map as Gaia. So you see the same double lines and broken double lines to indicate the type of road that it is. OnX also has turn-by-turn navigation, which seems to work quite well. And OnX can navigate to a spot. You can drop a waypoint in either Gaia or OnX and navigate to it. In OnX, the trail filter shows various types of trails that have already been explored and rated by some trained OnX volunteers. Scrolling below that, you have several map layers that can overlay the base map. These include private land, precipitation, temperature, air quality, wildfires, wildfire smoke, and historic wildfires, as well as 3 cell phone networks in the US. You could try the 1-week trial to see whether or not it has maps that are accurate for your area. OnX is really easy to download maps for offline use. You just have to show the area on your screen and click download. If you've already downloaded an area, it won't download it twice. If you want to move over and download an area next to it, it's super easy. Moreover, you can name those areas with your own name so that it's easy for you to find. The map that you see when you're downloading is the satellite map. It's actually downloading the contour map, so you don't have to worry about that. So creating routes is also pretty easy. You just have to set up a waypoint and click navigate to it. And you can import and export. So if you're going to ride a BDR like I'm planning, you can just import the GPX file from the BDR site. Okay, let's talk about the Backroad Mapbook. Okay, if you're not in Canada, then you might want to just skip ahead this section because these guys are Canadian only. But I really wanted to include them, not just because they're local here in BC, but because they use the BC Forestry database, not the same database as the other apps use. So that means their data is way more detailed. And that's a good thing, except I found that when I was out riding in the Caribou, there were so many roads shown that I couldn't tell which ones are ones that I wanted to ride on. Some of them are long abandoned and you couldn't even see where they were. So that's a bit of a problem because it's hard to tell which roads are the good ones. On the other hand, when I was hiking in the northern Sunshine Coast, there was a road closure and a bypass, and only the BRMB map book version of the app showed the bypass correctly. All the other maps showed the road incorrectly. Even though Gaia licenses a version of the BRMB maps, the Gaia licensed version did not show the bypass correctly. You know, when you get into a problem in the backwoods, this is one reason why I pay for more than one app, is so I have an alternative. When things are not going according to plan, it's really useful to be able to check an alternative map to see what's going on. Another strength of the BRMB map app is that it has a huge database of campsites and other recreational opportunities. So if I'm going anywhere in the backwoods in British Columbia, it's really nice to be able to pull up a campsite map. Both Gaia and OnX show many of their rec sites, and that's great, but you have to zoom in to see them. In BRMB, you click Show Me the campsite layer, and it'll show them at any zoom level. So that's really handy when you're trying to find a campsite that may be like a needle in a haystack. Saving for offline is pretty easy in BRMB. It's pretty intuitive, but there's a lot of functions in BRMB that are not intuitive. And so if you like that app, it's going to have a big learning curve. I was looking on YouTube to try and find some tutorials to figure out how to do some of these things, and a lot of people had complained about how difficult it was to create routes, save them, and follow them. So just know that BRMB is not the most intuitive. Now, these things will probably change and may have already changed since I was looking into it. BRMB also produces an SD card that you can fit into your Garmin, but I understand that it's only guaranteed compatible with the Garmin Zumo XT2, and I have the original Garmin Zumo XT, and it's a bit expensive to take a gamble as to whether or not that's going to work. Of course, you can import any GPX file into your Garmin Zumo, and I'll talk about that in another video. So there's one more app I want to talk about, and that's Rever. And Rever is, what I had thought about Rever is for making road trips, but Rever also has in the Pro version a way to make routes, off-road routes. Unlike the other apps that I'm talking about here, Rever limits your ability to create off-road routes to 5 kilometers at a time. Basically, you're making one step, and following the route. Now, if you're going to go for, many of our routes might be 20 or 30 kilometers, so fine, 6 steps. But I've done routes that are 150 kilometers, or like I'm going to do my BDR as whatever, it's 1,000 kilometers. So that's a lot of steps to have to put in, and I wouldn't want to have to create a route in there. I mean, you can always import routes into Rever and follow them. So if you just want to use Rever, that's fine. I find the Rever map has less detail than the other maps that I've talked about. So I don't like it as much, and I wouldn't want to use it for planning off-road routes. Okay, so in conclusion, on these 4 apps, Gaia GPS is definitely the reigning champ for off-road mapping. Although the BDR website downloads tracks in GPX format so that you can upload them into any of these apps, it specifically discusses how to do it in Gaia, because that's the app so many people are using. It's also the only one of these apps that has a free version for off-road planning. I like it because I've been using it so long that everything seems intuitive to me, but if you're new to off-road navigation, then you'll find a learning curve no matter which app you choose. The extensive database of BRMB has a lot going for it, especially the ability to locate camping spots. However, the inclusion of so many unusable roads makes the map complicated, and the unintuitive interface makes the learning curve steep. As I told you, I'm an OnX ambassador. That means I get a small commission if you buy through my link, and I do some promotions for OnX to receive free swag. But I did choose to pay for my first subscription because of the many features and because it's focused on off-road motorsports. The interface is easy and the maps are detailed. I especially like knowing where the few remaining old growth areas are, plus avoiding accidentally wandering onto private land when you think you're on crown land is a bonus. Between Gaia, BRMB, and OnX, I'd have to say that any of them provide good value for your money. I can't say the same for Rever for off-road use. If you're part of a community using Rever and you want to share your adventures, then it will work. But for planning a route off-road, it's not what I would choose. And here's the interesting bug that I wanted to tell you about. When I planned my Chilcotin ride, I thought the Chilco-Newton Road would be a nice ride along the Chilco River. When I arrived at my turn, I found the road closed. Just riding through this beautiful countryside is so relaxing. I say, what is the thing that I want to do? You know, this brings me a lot of joy. There we go. Oh, this is no through road. I mean, look, nobody's coming through here, so I'm not... Since I didn't have enough fuel to risk riding part way and returning, I couldn't find out whether or not the road really went through. Revisiting my Gaia app upon my return home, I found that Gaia would not create a route along the length of this road. I'm not sure what app I used to originally create this route. Zooming in on the point where the route would not go, I found a small gap that was only visible in an extreme close-up. There was also a suspicious anomaly in the depiction of the river adjacent to this gap. By looking at another layer of the map, I found that this point on the map was actually the joining of two sections of the Government of Canada map, so I wasn't sure if there was a gap in the road at all. This occurred on any map layer in Gaia. It also occurred on the OnX map, which showed the gap and a line in the river where the map edges meet on the government map. The BRMB map would not route through this gap, even though it did not show the gap on the map. Using the satellite view and even Google Earth view did not resolve the question, but some parts of Google Earth made me think the road was closed further along because it was hard to make out the track through the trees. Anyway, this is why we head out into the bush on our bikes, just to see how far we can go. And that's why, for me, every ride is an adventure. Thanks for watching my video, and I hope you enjoyed it. Please give me a like and subscribe. Watch for more adventures to come.